I now call this regular committee of the whole to order at 5:30. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Schubert?
Here.
Ms. McCall?
Here.
Ms. Bennett? Mr. Carpenter? Ms. Haley?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 5 present, 2 absent, we have a quorum.
We'll now take a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. At the start of each meeting, it bears to remind that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in an equitable, first-class education for a changing world. I wish to welcome Superintendent Student Advisory Council representative, who is not present this evening, but she is from East High School, and we will introduce her the next meeting. Are there any changes, corrections, or additions to the meeting minutes? If not, is there a consensus to approve? And you're not, thank you. Ms. Stanford will now lead Stakeholders Committee portion of the meeting. Ms. Stanford.
Okay. We'll begin by showing the 12-month agenda. Our feature presentation will be with Maureen Kirschman, Family and Community Engagement Manager, this evening. But first, let's begin by celebrating the good things happening in our district. Almost a decade after being in his classroom, one of Mr. Escalante's former Rockford students shared how grateful they were to have him as a middle school teacher. Vanessa Rosales wrote, "Mr. Ruben Escalante is the representation of what a teacher should be. I suffered from bullying in school, and he was the one to stand up for me and care about my mental well-being. He also helped me excel in my math journey, always challenging me, and without him, I don't think I would be who I am in college." Please go check out this awesome story and interview on 97ZOK's website for more details. In the month of November, Earl and Aaron visited Marshall Middle School, Marshall Elementary, Circles of Learning, Legacy, Guilford, Johnson, Barber, Beyer, Auburn, Kennedy, Washington, and West. Here are a couple of the pictures highlighting their visits. We always enjoy seeing the smiling faces of students and Earl. The Illinois State Board of Education has established a statewide system of affinity groups that will support and retain teachers of color. This network will bring teachers together to build a supportive community, examine current issues facing them, and make recommendations that address those issues. And our wonderful and very own Risa Middle School's 8th grade principal, Tamara Butler, has been selected as one of 40 facilitators for the Illinois Affinity Group Network. Congratulations, Tamara Butler, on being selected for such an amazing opportunity. Congratulations to the 7th and 8th grade girls basketball teams at both Eisenhower and Marshall Middle Schools. Both grades at both schools won their IESA regionals. Best of luck at sectionals. And on the vibe, on October 20th and 21st, the Illinois and Chicago sections of the American Association of Physics Teachers held a joint fall meeting at Joliet Central High School. The theme was Innovations in High School Physics. Mariana Rogerio, physics and AP physics teacher at Auburn High School, invited students to this meeting with her. She had 4 students, Jeffrey Matthew, Sarah Pearl Anderson, Ekaterina Dmitriev-Chevia, and Ashley Ferry, attend the meeting with her, 2 of which, Sarah Pearl and Jeffrey, asked if they could present at the conference. This experience allowed the students to share how the active learning environment and collaborative experiences created a class that not only was engaging and less daunting than they originally anticipated, but shared that they now cannot help but consider the physics of everyday life as they go about their daily activities. Please visit 205 Vibe on rps205.com to read more details on this blog and many others. There are no legislative updates this month, but please keep your eye out for legislative updates via your RPS email inboxes. On November 3rd, City of Rockford's Mayor Tom McNamara stopped by Kennedy Middle School. He talked to students about how city government works and what they can do if they want to become mayor someday. The mayor also spoke about our partnership with Rockford Promise. Thank you so much to Mayor McNamara. November 29th, Phantom Regiment announced their partnership with RPS 205. This collaboration represents a harmonious relationship where both parties stand to gain significantly. RPS students will benefit from access to top-notch instruments, equipment, and invaluable learning experiences, while the Phantom Regiment will secure essential rehearsal facilities to fine-tune performances. They will kick off this partnership with their first callback camp on December 8th through the 10th. And now for our feature presentation, I'll turn the floor over to Maureen Kirschman for an ARP ESSER partner update.
Hi. I'm Maureen Kirschman, the Family and Community Engagement Manager, and I will be walking you through a community call to action update tonight. Our last community call to action update was in February, and I am so excited to share with you all the current information that we have. I also want to make sure that I thank Ginny Barnett. She is our community engagement support professional for all of her work helping to gather all of this information. Ginny works very closely with our community partners and goes out to every organization each month to see our programs in action. She's sitting in back with me today. So we're going to start off with just a really brief recap of what the call to action is. In January of 2022, an innovative approach was taken to restore learning loss for our students due to COVID-19. A community-wide call to action was sent out requesting that organizations develop and submit proposals to help our students by extending our school day. We listened to our smaller organizations who shared that their largest barrier for most of them was our reimbursement times. So our finance department created a very unique process to provide weekly reimbursements instead of the net 45. We also partnered with Alignment Rockford and the Wabongo Leadership Council to work with some organizations who submitted proposals, and we entered into a total of 27 call to action service agreements. Next, I'm going to break down the agreements of the organizations that we contracted with. For our mentorship partners listed here, these frequently take place during the lunchtime hours inside of our school buildings, mostly with our middle school and high school students, as well as after school and on Saturdays. Our extended time programs listed here are really what come to mind when most of us think about after school programs with community organizations, and they tend to be more of a community center model. These are our after school programs, our Saturday programs, and a lot of those summer camps. All of our programs do have an academic enrichment focus to help support our students. Our fine arts and performing arts partnerships. These organizations provide a range of programming that takes place after school, on Saturdays, and then again through our summer camps. Total students served. We were really excited about this number. As of November 30th, we have 2,903 seats for students filled. 2,143 of these seats are unduplicated. This is a 126% increase in student participation from January of 2023. So we have to ask, well, why? What helped make this happen? We had more summer programs this past year. We had organizations were filling their staffing vacancies, opening up more seats for students to be able to participate. And we also listened to our organizations who told us that they wanted to make sure that we were helping them promote their summer programs, and we partnered heavily with our communications department to make sure that we put all of our summer partner program information onside of the RPS website and pushed it out alongside with the options that we offered to at the school district. Many of the students that attend more than one program are most likely to be enrolled in a mentorship program, as well as an after-school program. That's where we found the highest number of duplications. And pictured here, this is some of the kids that are out at the Washington Park Community Center with the Rockford Area Arts Council program. They have a multimedia program out there where students learn. It's really a self-guided student art program. The students say what they want to learn, and the Arts Council responds and provides different programming, and the students really wanted to learn just different multimedia methods of newscasting, so that's what they're doing. So where are our students served? The call to action was also set out to address the district's equity imperative. Here is a breakdown of where our students have attended schools. The smallest numbers that you'll see are with our early childhood centers. We were very excited to see that even families of our littlest learners were engaging with our community partners. For our spending, there was a slight error in the package you all received. It said January 2023. That should have read November of 2023. I apologize for that, and I did update it on this slide. The current amount awarded was $5,182,931, and the amount paid as of November 30th was $2,371,759.03. We will continue to pay out to organizations as the remainder of their contracts go for a lot of our organizations until September 30th of 2024. Barriers. A lot of our organizations saw barriers that were not expected. Like many organizations, including our own, staffing shortages had a major impact on our partners. Because of these shortages, many of our partner organizations were not able to start programming on time, and they were not able to serve the number of students that they had anticipated. And then transportation, of course, for some of our organizations remained a challenge, and we did work very closely with our transportation department to provide as much busing as we possibly could. We also encouraged organizations at the beginning of this year to complete the process to become a bus stop for if the students that they served lived within the zone of where their program was, and to remind families to designate their after-school program as an alternative drop-off location. So we worked very closely with organizations to help try to close some of those barriers. Successes, and this is some of the information that we are really excited to take a look at. Our attendance data from the 2022 school year to 2023. This is a heat map showing where our largest attendance, the median percentage improvement was. The district overall median percentage improvement for attendance during this time was 3%. As you can see with our community partners, a lot of our programming was above the district average. So we were really excited to see that a lot of students that are engaged with our community partners have a higher attendance rate. That was fantastic. The next two slides, we're going to look at the MAP median growth percentiles. For MAP reading, the median growth percentile went from 36 to 43. And the MAP math median growth percentile went from 40 to 41. And last, I'd like to close out with a brief presentation from Abby. Abby is a participant with the Antoine Harris Group Self-Equity Program, and she is going to talk about her experience working with the Antoine Harris Group and what she's gotten out of her partnership.
So, Abby, you just took this assessment. How do you feel about it?
I feel like I got to see myself in a light that I don't normally see myself in.
Okay, so tell me more.
I had to answer questions that weren't necessarily easy to answer about myself. I had to pick between a whole bunch of positive things about myself on which one is the least positive thing about me and the most positive thing about me, and choose what one would best fit me, which was hard for me to do, but it also got me thinking a lot about myself.
Moving forward, how do you think having this information will help you?
I'll be able to do research on what I can change about myself and make myself better from the negative things that it showed me about myself into the positive things I can learn and grow on it.
So you and I have been working together and meeting for weeks now. What's your biggest takeaway from working with me and things of that nature?
Getting to see myself in a better light, getting positive feedback on myself, getting to feel more confident about myself, and just having an environment of people that support me.
So, Abby, what does self-equity mean to you?
Growth in yourself. It doesn't have to be big progress, it can be little progress, but as long as you see yourself growing and changing in a positive light, it is self-equity.
And has self-equity, what you just said, has that helped you this school year?
Yes, it has. I have learned stuff about myself. I've been able to take stuff mentally and be able to help my mental health a lot more from it and grow.
So that is Abby, who's one of our participants with the Antoine Harris Group, and she talks about growth and a lot of her positive experience with that program. We have seen a lot of growth with our students that are engaged with our call to action partners, and I want to also thank you, the board, for your continued support with our community partnerships. Without your support, we would not be able to provide all of these opportunities for our students and for our families. Questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So in regards to the shortage with the other partners, were there any changes in the programs that reflected barriers in addition to the shortage?
Can you, the biggest challenge we saw with the shortage was that programs that were hoping to start at the beginning of the school year last year didn't start until second semester. That was one of the biggest challenges that we saw.
So specifically, what was the barrier with Washington Park Community Center?
Washington Park, I'd have to go in specifically to their identified barrier. Staffing was a shortage that we did hear from them within the reports that they had provided to us, that they just had some staffing challenges with having their positions just continuously stay staffed.
Okay, Dr. Jarrett, was that was there a situation with the contract that created? It seemed like it was something specific with Washington Park.
I would have to look into that one specifically and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Bennett?
Mine's more of a statement. So I know, Maureen, that in internal, external, we talked about your team being able to provide reports to principals. So schools that have different programming to make sure that principals are aware which programming existed and things like that. I don't know if you want to elaborate on it more or not, but just so the rest of the board's aware.
Yes, so we have begun that process of sorting out the data of where students are attending programming. I will use Community Life Center as an example. Their organization is located in the southwest corridor of Rockford, yet a lot of the students that attend their programming actually attend Constance Lane Elementary School. So if we can provide that information to schools, we can help them bridge that gap with some of the community partnerships that they may not be aware of that are serving their school community, and to also just provide them with just general information of this is where your kids are when they're not with you. That answers your question.
Mrs. McCall?
Okay, if we can go back to the the stats that you provided regarding the MAP reading and the MAP math.
Yes.
So some of the programs are extended time, fine arts and mentoring and things like that. So how is their attendance in those programs? What is the curriculum that makes it reflective upon obtaining these score increases?
Sure. So the MAP scores you see here, we did suppress organizations that did not serve around 30 students to protect the identity of the students that attend those programs. And the data here only reflects students that were enrolled in those programs for both years. So they had to be a part of the program, and we have to have MAP data for them for both years in order to pull this information. And then it's a median growth percentile.
Okay, so it's not like a real aggregate.
We could dive down a little bit deeper if you'd like to, but for the purpose of this, we did a median growth percentile.
And the second question is, as far as the barriers, what is being done to address the barriers as far as transportation, because there's still time within their, the grant to fulfill, what did you say it was, September 30th,
2024.
24?
Yes.
Yeah, so what, you know, has been done to try to address some of these barriers so we can ensure successful participation in the programs until the end?
That is an excellent question. Ginny works a lot in the Welcome Center during the summertime, so for organizations, for parents who had partnered with organizations for after-school care, worked with them to make sure that they were identifying that address as their alternative stop. And then also, again, working with organizations at the beginning of the school year before the transportation was finished to get their organization listed as a drop-off spot if the participant was within their zone. Students do have to live within the zone of the program in order to receive transportation services to that program. We've also worked a lot with RMTD to make sure and to push out that continued information that students are able to ride the bus for free. And as recent as 2 weeks ago, my team was even out at Kennedy helping students learn how to ride our bus system and to navigate the bus system to help them become more comfortable riding the RMTD buses so they are able to find access to programming if there isn't an RPS option available.
And then one other question.
Sure.
Just to ensure the success rate of the programs that we're participating, when the grant is over, what is being done to make these programs sustainable within the schools?
So we will continue to collect data throughout this school year, and then we will look at the data collectively from the beginning of the program until the end, and then have larger conversations with other departments to figure out what the next steps are. And I'm sure that maybe Dr. Jarrett, if you could speak a little bit more to that, as you're nodding your head very in agreement.
No, nothing to add.
Okay.
That's absolutely what we need to do is look at the impact. I think measuring attendance and student growth are two excellent criteria, and we need to continue to look at the results and hopefully continue investments in programs that are working well, and really excited to see the preliminary results, and hopefully we'll continue to see increased growth and attendance moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jarrett. One last thing. As far as some of the programs, you know, they're typical like drop-ins. I've dropped in a couple of programs and witnessed a couple of them being done, whatever. But so how are we measuring success when on a say there's a program that meets on Friday and it's a different population every time? You know, how are you following and tracking those students, and how will that success be able to be measured up against the ones that have the same students that come weekly?
That is an excellent question, and Ginny is working very closely with our IS department to develop reports. So we will be able to pull that reporting data based on dates to see what, if a student was at, let's just for example, like the YMCA that week, we would be able to see where their attendance was at the YMCA. Were they at school every single day that week? How are they doing academically, and really get down into some of those details. And that's something that we are actively working on right now, because we do want to make sure that we have all of that data so we do make informed decisions going forward with our organizations.
Okay.
Say something about that.
Come up to the mic, please.
So with our invoicing and stuff in the last sort of 8 months or so, we've been asking for programs to submit their rosters along with invoicing so that we can make sure that they're serving the students that they need to be. By and large, most programs see the same students. There's some fluctuations. Sometimes students don't show up. Sometimes they do show up, but a lot of times it's only a few number of different students that are actually showing up. So the consistency with who is at what program is pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question before she gets too far away?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I can't speak today. So for the invoices that you receive with the roster, does the students' attendance get entered into Panorama for the?
Well, it's getting. So I think we started in September working with Kelly Smith, and we've also worked with Jeff Lowry quite a lot to compile all of the rostering data, which is where all this has come from.
Okay.
I've basically taken all of our rosters for the entire time of programming that we have, and entered them all by hand. So,
Lovely. Okay. Thank you for doing
now
that.
that it's like in place, moving forward, whenever I get rosters, I go through and make sure that if there are any new students in attendance, that it is in eSchool.
Okay,
Which
thank you.
then pulls a panorama. So we are working on developing a system so you can really sort and filter of which student attending this school attends this program and what was their attendance rate. That we have developed the method to do it. Now we're building out the Cognos reports to run the
Okay,
report.
great. So then teachers can also see, and
Yes.
counselors, everybody can be on the
Yes.
same
All
page.
the, all the programs
Lovely.
and like dates attended are in eSchool specifically by
Okay,
program.
thank you.
One more, I'm sorry.
This is great.
Is there an evaluation as far as for the students that are participating as well as the teachers who the students come from? Like, is there some type of evaluation or rating or something of the programs that are administered?
So within their proposal, each organization identified how they were going to measure success. And a lot of it is tied to student attendance. Most of it is tied to student attendance. That was the objective, was let's get our kids enrolled in programs. We know if kids are enrolled in programs, we're going to see higher attendance rates, which we definitely do. To answer your question as far as our teachers evaluated, that is an excellent question. And I think that we will bring that back to the table and explore that further.
Do you mean like client satisfaction? So like how satisfied a youth is with the service that they received? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I mean, both are good, but yes, especially the student. I want to know how satisfied the teachers are with the progress of the students that are attending these programs.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
November 17th, Froberg Elementary received a generous donation of $5,000 from Burlington Stores through its partnership with Adopt a Classroom. This was in celebration of the grand opening of the new store in Rockford. Teachers will use the funds towards school supplies to help ensure students have the learning materials and tools they need to succeed. On November 9th, Nicor Gas and the nonprofit Operation Warm handed out 500 new winter coats and accessories to students at Washington Elementary. Nicor Gas and its employees are committed to providing warmth and peace of mind to local families. Together with Operation Warm, they have given more than 3,000 new coats to children at schools across northern Illinois. We finished our deck with the board calendar, reminding board members of the many opportunities available to interact with our students, family, and community each month. Make sure you check the calendar on a regular basis for the most up-to-date information. And if any board member has anything to share regarding any school events you've attended or any interactions you've had with the community, now is your chance. Ms. McCall.
Unfortunately, with my broken ankle, I haven't been able to get out as much as I normally do, but I'll be back.
We hope you heal quickly. Anyone else? Anything to share? Okay, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Ms. Stanford. I do not see Mr. Carpenter, so Ms. Haley will now lead the Performance and Monitoring Committee portion of the meeting.
So this evening for the Performance and Monitoring Committee, we will have a presentation by our College and Career Readiness staff, Bridget French. She will give us an update. She's the Executive Director of College and Career, and she will present an overview of our academies, which includes career and technical education, funding, as well as work-study programs.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Bridget French, and I am Happy to present to you tonight about academies and highlight a couple of our programs. So just as a reminder, why we do academies is so that every student has a place and every student belongs. There are three main tenets to academies. Those are smaller learning communities, inquiry-based teaching and learning, and business and civic engagement. So this is not a program. It is a model and a paradigm shift. So this is the way that we do high school now in Rockford Public Schools. As you may recall from your own experience, this is what a traditional high school model looks like. And this is what our academy schools look like now. So the green dot is our academy coach. Every high school has one academy coach with the executive principal just to the right. And then each academy has its own academy principal that is with that student through the course of their high school career. And those teachers work with that academy principal as well as the students in that academy through grades 10 through 12. In ninth grade, they spend the year exploring what academy and pathway they might want to go into. And in 10th grade, they start that with an entry-level pathway course. As a junior, they take the second level, and then as a senior is that culminating experience. These are our academies: freshman, business, production, health, and service. Obviously, all students are in the freshman academy for their freshman year, and then choose one of these four academies that they begin as a sophomore. Often get the question, what if a student wants to change academies? They absolutely can, and we encourage them to do that in 10th grade so that they could still get that full opportunity for the 3-course sequence. If they decide as a junior that they would like to change, they can still do that as long as they have a meeting with their counselor and principal to ensure that they're going to still be on track to graduate. These are all of the pathways that exist under each academy, and this is all in your document, so I'm going through it sort of quickly. But then the second tenet of academy, as I mentioned, is that inquiry-based teaching and learning. So we really want to get to a place where students aren't doing projects, they're really learning through project-based learning. So rather than sitting and listening to a teacher teach at them, they are really engaged in their learning, and the teacher is more of a facilitator of their learning. This is our work-based learning and career development continuum. So these are all of the experiences that we want our students to have throughout their high school career. It actually starts in 8th grade with a high school readiness class that prepares them for high school, gets them thinking about what high school might be like, but more importantly, what credits are and that credits matter. How our community supports us in a couple different ways. So in that work-based learning continuum are listed all of the things that happen by grade. The community comes in school to support mock interviews. They guest speak in many of our classrooms. We have some instances where they're reviewing our curriculum from an industry lens. So what might it look like to teach fabrication from an industry lens? Having those people from industry come in and really ensure we're aligning to those industry standards is pretty critical. We have advisory council meetings once a quarter. That includes all of our community partners who are interested. We get together and we talk about how they can better support or leverage their networks to support our schools. And then equipment review. So you just saw maybe within the month a Roosevelt grand opening of the remodel of their manufacturing space. That is because we had some community members that said, this space could be better and we want to help make it better, and we're going to donate the labor and equipment to make it better. So they really help ensure, again, that we're meeting industry standards in our, in particular in our production academy. Outside of school support comes by way of the Academy Expo, site visits, which is typically about an hour long, and those happen in sophomore year, when that is really one of the experiences to help students determine if they made the right choice. So we have a very kind of cliche example that happened maybe 2 or 3 years into academies, where a student went into a hospital and saw blood and passed out and decided maybe the health academy is not for me. So that is a good opportunity for them to really decide, did I make the right decision? Job shadows actually are happening this week for the production academy. So we shifted to a model where all students, all juniors in an academy go out for 1 week during the school year. So all of our juniors in the production academy are going out for a job shadow this week. Our team does a great job of connecting with industry partners to make sure our students are having a really in-depth experience at our partner job sites. Internships is something that we're just starting to build out, and then teacher externships is something that we did a couple summers ago and would like to revive again for this coming summer, because we heard from our teachers that it was really great to get out into, you know, the industry that they engage with, but actually see it, you know, from the ground floor. We also partner pretty extensively with the trades. So these are some of the main partners, but certainly not all encompassing. Northwest Illinois Buildings Trade Union, they have about 17 different trades that are represented. NIBCA, which is the Northern Illinois Building Contractors Association, they have about 100 different affiliate organizations. Plumbers and pipe fitters also is a great partner to RPS. And then we work with, you know, the people that run these sort of umbrella organizations to engage their members, but we also work very closely with the member organizations as well. So I want to highlight our work study program, which started just this past summer. This is a brand new program to the district that we created internally after hearing from our business partners that our students continue to come to work for them and don't have soft skills. We've heard from many of our employer partners that we don't care what training they have as long as they have the soft skills to be on time, to be able to problem solve, to be able to work as a team. And we hear this over and over again. So we wanted to address that. And the overview of the program is that students earn credit for working at a job they already have. They have to demonstrate soft skills on the job. They have to meet with a job coach that is employed by RPS at least once a month. And then if they have demonstrated soft skills, they earn 1 credit per semester. So we have started this this past summer. Students are currently enrolled now, but we don't have the data yet, but I'll share some of the summer data with you. Students learn about the work-study program through their counselor, signage around the school. The job coaches actually go to the cafeteria or the library and have like open office hours, connecting with kids. We have some of them chaperone, like the job shadows are a great example because they're all juniors. You have to be 16 or older to participate, so they're out not only chaperoning but connecting with students and saying, hey, have you heard about our work-study program? And students meet with the job coach and provide their manager's name and location. The job coach goes to the business, meets with the manager, says, hey, we're going to be coming into your place of business. Is this okay with you? We have not had anyone say no, because ultimately it benefits the employer, it benefits the students, and it benefits, you know, the workforce having a student that is demonstrating some of these soft skills. The manager meets with the job coach and the student together, but then they also meet with the job coach, just the two of them, to say, you know, hey, this employee really has an attitude problem and I just don't know what to do with her. Then the job coach has essentially like a toolbox of resources for all these different job soft skills, and leverages that to work with the student. And they don't breach any kind of confidentiality, so they don't go and say, like, hey, I heard that you have an attitude problem. They say, you know, maybe we should work on communication. And we have heard so many stories of, you know, I was going to fire this student, but she has really turned it around, and we are so happy to have her. Just glowing remarks about how amazing our students are from employers around the community. These are the soft skills that they're focused on. The state of Illinois calls them employability skills. And they are things that you have probably heard over and over again, but continue to resonate to employers and community partners around the region. So students have to earn 3 badges to get a credit. And the badges are digital, and they're awarded through a platform called Credly. And the job coach goes in and awards the badge to the student once they have demonstrated it. And then the student kind of goes in and collects the badges. A learning badge means that they're demonstrating it, they're starting to show that they know it. Demonstrating means they can do it without being directly told what to do. And leading means they're demonstrating it and they can teach it to others. So there are 3 badges for every soft skill. I know this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but students have multiple opportunities to earn badges. So these are our summer results. For the start of the program, we had 144 students participate, earning 115 credits. So that means 115 students earned at least 3 badges. We engaged 47 employers, 30 of those new to college and career readiness. So these are 30 partners that we did not previously have a relationship with. And this is an overview of the program. The career coach or the job coach, the students, and the employers are the 3 main stakeholders in this program. Moving on, shifting gears a little bit here to career and technical education funding. So there are 9 regional districts that receive federal and state career and technical education funds through our EFE, which is an education for employment agency called SyncID, which is the Career Education Associates of North Central Illinois. Every district that receives these dollars has to go through an education for employment agency in the state of Illinois. So SyncID is ISB's EFE for our region. These are all the school districts that receive the funding through SyncID. This is the funds that we have received throughout the last few years, color-coded by school, and I'll explain how the funding breaks down. So the funding formula is somewhat complex. It is the number of students that pass a course designated as a CTE course. The course must be taught by a teacher that is a certified CTE teacher, and the class must be part of an approved instructional CTE sequence. So the CTE director, which works on my team, he works closely with the SyncID system director to make sure all of our classes that are in our pathways are coded appropriately. So the first course in the classification has to be a career awareness class. The second course has to be exploration, and the third class has to be development. So this is why pathways are important. Beyond that, it's good for students, it has to be in place to secure our funding. Here's an example of how this is the biomedical pathway, and this is how the courses are classified in the state of Illinois and for our region. And they have to be laid out like this in order to receive the funding. Then also students have to pass the class. So this is the number of credits generated by each school. And you can see that Guilford and Jefferson have a significant amount of credits generated. That's because they have more courses that are CTE courses taught by a CTE teacher in a classified program of instruction. And then that is the percentage of credits through the whole region, so all 9 districts, that is the percentage that we get. The failing percentage is important because we don't get funding for students that fail the course. So then the funding is based 2 years in arrears. So if you look at the first chart, you can see that the funding for FY24 dipped quite a bit. That's because that was based on the 21-22 school year, which we were still coming out of COVID and failures were quite high. So the dollar amount is provided to the academy coaches. The academy coaches work with the teachers to determine what do you need for your classroom, and then the academy coach writes a plan for how it will be spent. That plan is sent to me and the CTE director. We review it. then it goes to the CNC system director, she reviews it, and then she sends it to ISB. An additional factor in this is that 70% of the funding has to be spent on the targeted industries that have been set by the Illinois State Board of Education. For FY24, that's education, health sciences, manufacturing, and transportation. So we have to spend 70% of our dollars on these 4 areas. So I know there's a lot of acronyms and jargon, but I am happy to answer any questions you have about work study or CTE funding, how it works, where the dollars go.
Any questions?
Yes, I have questions. So actually, and I'm sure you're expecting this, but I actually want to go back to the building and trades and the relationship we have with unions, specifically to get clarity on how are we identifying students who have no interest in going to college?
So in a few ways. One, we started the Career Running Start program, which allows students to have paid tuition as seniors for welding, mechatronics, manufacturing, or aviation maintenance. So that's a new program that really encourages students to go directly into these high wage, high demand industry certification positions. Second, the students that have chosen a couple of our academies, production being the biggest one, are heavily supported by the trades, and the trades are in our schools all the time talking to students about the amount of money they could make by going directly into the trades rather than going to college. So those relationships with our industry partners are pretty key to connecting students to those jobs outside of, straight from high school, outside of college.
Okay, so there is a presence of trades representatives in our schools?
Yes.
Okay, and so one of the things I've learned is so there is a process in order to get in the trades or an apprenticeship, and you can't get in the apprenticeship if you don't pass an aptitude test, correct?
For some of them, yes.
Okay, I think for many of them. So to go back to in preparing our students, so apparently Rock Valley currently have classes to help students prepare for the aptitude test. So what partnerships have we, or what have we engaged in as students have the ability to, with the Running Start or the dual credit program, to be able to also attend the courses? Because from my understanding, I think it's like 3 months. So how can students who don't have an interest in going to college, but say have an interest in trades, and maybe they haven't really committed because of that piece that they haven't heard of,
sure,
which is being able to actually get into the apprentice program. So are there any foreseeable opportunities for students that's able to take the courses that will help prepare them for the apprenticeship while they're in their junior or senior year?
So there are not courses specifically designated for that reason. However, we do have a partnership with RRVTMA, Rock River Valley Tooling and Machining Association, and their apprenticeship coordinator comes into our schools and actually sits down with our students and gives them practice aptitude exams to help them for when they do actually take the exam. So that's one thing available to them. Also, we have, when students go on these job shadows that we're doing this week, the apprenticeship coordinators are very candid about what is required of a student in order to get into an apprenticeship, and offer support at any time if a student needs that to apply, to take the aptitude test, some of our partners have even offered financial supports like equipment, boots, things like that.
Thank you. So to go back, I just want to make sure I have information right before I start, offering or sharing information. So currently, what exactly is Rock Valley offering if they're not courses? Is it just that 3-month program, whatever that looked like in preparation for the apprenticeship?
So I'm not familiar with the 3-month course that you're speaking of. Our partnership with Rock Valley includes a half a day on campus at one of their various sites for our senior students, and when they graduate with an industry certification in welding, manufacturing, mechatronics, or aviation maintenance.
Okay, and do you have any percentage of students that have shown any interest in trades or any feedback on whether they have or have not or why?
Specifically for Career Running Start, it's our first year, so I don't have any data on that yet.
Okay.
And then as far as like any kind of sentiment surveys, I don't have any information quite like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
I just wanted to provide clarification on what Mrs. Pearson was getting to with the 3-month program.
Oh, thank you.
That's probably the Highways Construction and Careers Program, HCCTP.
Yeah.
And so that particular program actually requires an interview process. Students can apply, but there's an interview process, and there are a limit in the number of seats, but it's open to students who have graduated high school. So they don't take students who are currently in school because they do want them to be able to go to work right after.
Okay.
So that's that particular program. But I did have some questions.
Sure.
Regarding several, I'll start with the, pretty much with, I know that there's a Math 96 course that's available to students who are going into the CTE programs. Is it just for the CTE programs, or is that Math 96 course available to everyone?
That is available to everyone. At RPS, we call it transitional math, and it is available to any student that wants to take it. Typically, as a senior, you don't have a 4th year of math. We require 3 years of math, so it's geared towards seniors that want to enter college ready for math. So we have worked with the state of Illinois to earn portability. So what that means is if a student passes that class with a C or higher, they'll go into any Illinois state post-secondary institution without having to take any sort of math placement exam. They will be placed immediately into college level math. So it is available to all students.
Okay. To get into that transitional math course, what level of math would a student need to be at?
Any student can take it. So yes. So if a student has previously failed a math course in freshman through junior year, we would obviously recommend that they would make up a math class in their senior year, but some students, not many, but some students take transitional math and make up the credit that they've missed in order to catch up a little bit. It does cover some of the math concepts, but it's also very application-based, so it's very much centered in problem and project-based learning. So students that have taken it have been pretty successful.
So the curriculum that's followed is the same curriculum that's followed at RVC for that particular transitional math?
It is similar. We had to have it approved in partnership with Rock Valley by a state portability panel that Rock Valley has presence on. They have leadership that sits on the panel, and so the curriculum was approved by that panel.
Okay. So just as a point of clarification, a student who may have failed a course, they're eligible to go into this transitional math course, and if they pass it, they are at 100 level math course if they decide to go to Rock Valley.
Yes.
Great. Okay. My other question is regarding the work study.
Okay.
I know that there are 3 badges that are
Yes.
earned. And if a student earns 3 badges, they get 1 credit.
Correct.
Now, those badges are just for each, like problem solving. There's a list of those
Yes.
work ethics.
Yes.
So they can earn up to how many credits if they get
So
off?
they can only earn 1 credit a semester, but they have to earn 3 badges to get that 1 credit.
Okay.
And that badge can be in any of these employability skills. And if they earn 3 badges, that says they are learning reliability, they are learning planning and organizing, and they are learning, that's okay. We just want to see that they are demonstrating these soft skills and that they are learning something.
So they can actually earn a whole lot more badges, but only get credit for?
Yes, technically they could earn 3 badges per skill.
Okay. The next question I have regarding the job shadows.
Yes.
I know you have great partnerships with the production academy, with
Yes.
the manufacturers. Job shadows for the other career academies, how are those going? And
We have great community partnerships. I would say the most difficult job shadows to organize is for the business academy, not for the fault of any of our community partners. It just takes a lot more conversation with those partners to help them develop a good job shadow, like a robust job shadow. So Production Academy is sort of easy because they're doing hands-on things usually all day in their careers. But if you think about, like my job, I sit at a desk or in meetings all day. It's hard to demonstrate that and make it look cool to a student, right? So that could be the challenge for the Business Academy, is finding a way for students to engage for 3 to 4 hours in a career that primarily sits kind of behind a desk. Not always. I mean, there's areas like IT. Our IT department does an amazing job with our job shadows. Our graphics design coordinator, Kate Speck, she does an amazing job with job shadows and hosting students. So we've kind of modeled it ourselves really well, but there are just some industries that are a little bit more challenging than others.
Okay, I think that's all I have for questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very
Bridget.
much.
So the next presentation that we will have this evening is 6B, Teen Dating Update. Jennifer Lawrence, our Chief of Student Services, is here to give us an update on the work with the teen dating violence.
Good evening. I presented the last board meeting where we were, where we are, and where we want to be. I don't have a robust presentation for you tonight. We're kind of in that planning phase strategy. I can tell you that I've sent recruitment emails through principal news and principal headlines and educator news to recruit teachers, staff members, and principals, and also to get principal nominations for students that might be part of this planning committee. So far, I have 4 yeses. I've sent personal emails to folks to make sure that we're gathering voices, and then also sent emails out to the principals because we didn't get a large response from those direct requests. Our teen dating violence video is done. That's ready to go. That will be vetted by this planning committee. So a group of our school psychologists and our school social workers created that over the last 2 months. So that is ready to go for review for the planning committee. The city of Rockford will be involved in our planning. I was trained in project management, so the next step really for us will be to come together. I kind of have a very crude project management work breakdown structure for them so that we can start planning out the tasks that will need to be done, and I kind of highlighted those in the previous board update. Moving forward, I'll have a better presentation for you to show you what our status is on each one of those deliverables. Our packages are things that we're going to get done. And that's just kind of where we're at this point. We plan to host that brainstorming session prior to winter break based on people's availability and scheduling, if not within the first 2 weeks of January. So we're really starting to move ahead. We're going to be very cautious and make sure that we're not moving forward too quickly, and that we're inviting all of the stakeholders to make sure that we have the right structure in place. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. So finally, we have items 7A through 7U for consent agenda items for the Progress Monitoring Committee. Board members, are there any questions for any of those items? Okay, if no questions, we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haley. We will now have Ms. McCall to lead the Planning and Development Committee portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam President. In the interest of time, we're going to move item D up first because we have the guest here. So right now we're going to do the County Schools Facility Sales Tax, the CSTF. Dr. Greg Brown, Chief Financial Officer, and Ann Noble of Stife, Nicholas and Company will give a presentation on a county school facility tax. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll just make a brief introduction here. So, as you guys know, we're working on a new five-year facility master plan. And so at some point through this process, we're going to need some additional funds to be able to complete the facility master plan. So there's a number of different options we can consider for funding that. We could sell bonds, we can, do some other things. But one kind of unique way to fund facilities is through a sales tax. And so this has been successfully done in 50-plus counties in the state of Illinois. And I'm going to turn it over to Ann Noble, who's really an expert on this. I worked with Ann when I worked over in Belvedere, and we actually put this in place in Boone County, and it has been very successful over there. They actually haven't used it for construction in Boone County. They've actually used it to abate real estate taxes, which is another use of this money. You can actually abate your bond and your interest payments through the facility sales tax as well. So it's got multiple uses, and I'm going to turn it over to Ann so she can talk in more detail about it.
Thanks, Greg. My colleague Steve is going to hand out paper copies of this, just really for the sake of one slide. There are very small numbers that you might be interested in, so I wanted you to be able to refer to that more easily than what we will have on the screen. So please interrupt me as we go. I will try to, in the interest of time, go through some of this information quickly. But this is really sort of a landmark change in school funding in Illinois. Before this law passed, obviously all local dollars for school districts, as you all would know, come from property taxes. And that's not true in every state, but in Illinois that has historically been where the local funding has been derived. So this law made the first opportunity for school districts to pull funding from something other than just property taxes through a sales tax. The law is modeled on a very similar law that went into effect in Iowa and is now in place across the whole state. This tax can be voted in up to 1 cent per dollar, or a 1% tax, or 1/4% increments up to 1%. So you can vote a quarter, a half, 3/4, or a full percent. This just shows you the counties where the tax is in effect. They're highlighted in green. In blue, we have the counties that have voted it but have failed. And in white, the counties that have not yet attempted to pass the tax. So as Dr. Brown indicated, we have 57 counties now that have the school facilities sales tax in place, and quite a few of them also considering it for next year on the ballot. This slide just gives you some sample sales tax rates across the state. The state has a base sales tax rate. The minimum sales tax rate is 6.5%. And then up to, in this example, we're showing you Elgin at 10.5%. Home rule cities and cities have a fair amount of flexibility to add sales tax themselves. Counties also use sales tax. So there are a lot of different entities tapping into this income level, but this gives you a sense of sales tax ranges across the state. So this sales tax, every sales tax in the state, because we have to make things complicated in Illinois, every sales tax in the state does tax different baskets of goods. They're not all identical. This sales tax base, I think, is most commonly or easily thought of as a Walmart tax. It's a retail sales tax, first of all, so anything sold at the wholesale level is not taxed. It does not tax services. It does not tax unprepared basic grocery items. And it does not tax registered vehicles of any type, so that people are not incented to leave the county to buy a car, for example. And it does not tax medicine, prescription or non-prescription. But other than those things I just listed, it taxes basically anything you buy at Walmart. You go to Walmart, you buy a pair of jeans, taxed. Go to Walmart, buy a soda, taxed. Okay, it's a basic retail sales tax. Restaurant food is taxed. Pretty basic stuff, but meant to exclude a lot of the necessities of life. Hence, the groceries and medicine exclusions. This tax is also unique in that you can only use this in a very limited way. This tax is called the county school facilities sales tax. You can only use it for school facilities, with one exception that I'll explain to you in a minute. So anything you can think of that you could do to one of your school buildings, you could use this money for. Anything that's health, life, safety eligible, you can use this money. Athletic improvements, roofing, paving, playgrounds, demolishment, buying land, architectural fees, anything that relates to your upkeep and maintenance of school facilities, you can use this money for. You can also use it, as Dr. Brown mentioned, to pay off bonds that you've sold previously for school facility purposes. And due to an amendment to the law that we put in place in '07, you can now use this money to pay school resource officers and mental health professionals. Other than those two categories I just mentioned, you cannot use a single dollar of this money to pay human beings. You cannot use it for salaries for school district employees, even your custodians, who arguably do a lot of work to maintain your facilities. Okay, so it does not help with direct instructional costs. You can't buy buses, you can't buy computers. It is truly for school facility purposes, and then that one add-on for SROs and mental health professionals. How sales tax revenue can be used can differ across the county, and I'll talk about this in a second, but the tax goes into effect on a county-wide basis. So every district gets to decide how they're going to use the money, and every district will make different choices, and that is fine. You can really use it in kind of these three general buckets. Pay as you go, so you can say, we're going to get $20 million of revenue every year from the sales tax. We're going to do $20 million of projects every summer with our sales tax revenue, okay? Pay as you go. You can sell a special kind of bond called an alternate revenue bond that is secured by an alternate revenue source, and in this case, that would be the sales tax, which does not hit the property tax levy, and then use those bonds to do a bigger project up front, use the sales tax revenue to pay off the bonds over time. Or, as I already mentioned, you can use the money to retire existing bonds that have been sold for school facility purposes, or any combination of these three. So you could split it 1/3, 1/3, you know, any combination that you want to do. And every year the board gets to decide. This is truly an annual decision of the board, other than to the extent you sell bonds. If you sell bonds that have a 10-year payback period, you have obviously obligated sales tax revenue to those bond payments for that period. But other than that, this is an annual decision of the board as to how the revenue is used. This benefits taxpayers in two potential ways using the sales tax money. Obviously, the first is super obvious. If you choose to use some of the money to pay off some of the district's existing bonds, that has a direct impact on your property tax extension every year. And then there's the more indirect way, which is what we've seen in Iowa over the years that it's been in effect, and we're starting to see in Illinois now that it's been in effect. And that is really over time, the need to sell bonds secured by property taxes is lessened because you have this revenue stream that you're using to keep up your facilities with less reliance on property taxes. Just as an aside, this revenue has no impact on your EBF formula, nor on your status under tax caps, under PTEL. It doesn't affect your borrowing capacity. It does not affect funding from the state. This money, because it's so restricted, is not part of the EBF formula, because you can't use this to pay teachers. So it is outside of the formula. This is the page, this is why I gave you the handout. Nobody can read this. This shows you the revenue for every district in the county and the impact for them. So let me just explain a little bit how this funding works. This funding works by assigning a dollar amount for every student that lives in the county. If you live in Winnebago County and you attend public school based on last year's actual sales tax receipts, every student in the county is worth $869. That number that's at the very bottom of column 3. That number will change every year based on actual revenues, but based on last year's numbers and the population of students you had in the county. Every student's worth $869. They carry that number attached to them. And whatever school district they go to, if that student lives in Winnebago County and attends public school, that $869 follows that student wherever they go. Okay? So the enrollment that every district in the county has within the county drives their piece of the revenue pie. So on this page, I've assumed the full 1% is voted in. And what that results in is approximately $37.6 million. It's the number at the bottom of column 8. It's $37.6 million of sales tax revenue across the county. And that's based on real sales tax data from last year. And then I've allocated it per district based on the amount of students they have in Winnebago County. So you can see District 205 at 27,500 approximately students results in about $23.9 million of revenue to the district, assuming you voted in the full 1%. And you can see what that means to all of the different districts across the county, including districts that just have little slivers, like North Boone has just a tiny little sliver of property within Winnebago County. If they have any students that live in Winnebago County, they will get some revenue from them. They might have none. We would obviously pull that for real data when the time comes. There's a lot of data on this page. I could walk you through all of this, but do you have any specific questions on this page or anything else I've said so far? The revenue is going to be just based on true actual sales. So You will see that the revenues are a little volatile, maybe a little erratic. This slide just shows you actual sales tax collections over the last 15 or so years. So you can see the big up-down swings. We had a big drop in 2020 due to COVID, not surprisingly. And then in 2021, we had a huge swing up. Also, some of that due to the recovery from COVID, but some of it also, starting in 2021, online sales were added to the sales tax base for this sales tax. So that increased revenue for all of the counties collecting this revenue by about 30%. So of that 55% increase there, about 30 of it is due to online sales and the rest due to recovery from COVID. But you can see the numbers are up and down, sort of with economic cycles, as you would expect. The process, if you're interested in pursuing this, again, this is a county-wide ballot question. So what it takes is that districts representing at least 50% of the enrollment in the county have to pass a resolution to put it on the ballot. You guys are over 50%. So you can put it on the ballot all by yourself. But we obviously suggest and recommend that as many districts in the county work cooperatively together and all boards hopefully pass the resolution and put it on the ballot. It will go on every voter's ballot in the county, and it's a simple majority countywide. So it could pass in Rockford, but if you didn't have enough votes countywide to be over 50%, it wouldn't pass, for example. So you do have to get some consistent support across the county, ideally, to have success on this. This is what the ballot language looks like, assuming you wanted to include funding for school resource officers and mental health professionals. There is an option to approve this tax without that language. I would suggest if you're voting it, you use this alternative language because it gives you the option to spend the money that way. Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question since it's also on this slide. So for student resource officers and mental health professionals, since it can't be for district staff, these would have to be contracted staff?
No, for those categories of employees, you can use it.
So social workers, counselors, anybody that is, okay, yes, included? Okay, yes. Thank you.
Yes. Actual implementation is, again, just simple majority across the county for it to be passed. And then it takes, depending on which election cycle you're voting, it does take 6 to 8 months before the tax is implemented. We're only allowed to change sales tax in Illinois twice a year, either on July 1 or January 1. So depending on the election cycle that you're voting on, that's the lag time we're talking about. Then it takes about 3 months before the money literally starts flowing to you because it gets collected at the registers, then it goes back to the Department of Revenue, and then cycles back to the district. So we have a 3-month lag before you start getting revenues. After that, it's a monthly deposit based on actual sales tax receipts from the 3 months prior. The point I want to make on this slide is that this revenue does not flow through the state's budgetary process or require any approval from the General Assembly. So being subject to proration, for example, like we experienced with general state aid in days gone by, is just not really feasible given how this is funded, because it literally is collected at the registers, it goes to the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue allocates all the different kinds of sales tax because there are multiple different dollars getting collected of sales tax. They allocate it all out, send it back out. It's not part of the state's budget process. There is, I will also highlight, a 2% withholding fee by the Department of Revenue on every sales tax collected, not just this one. It's how they fund their budget because they are not part of the state's budget process either. And that's already been netted out of the numbers I've given you. And that is it. I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions regarding the county school facility sales tax? Mrs. Haley?
Yes. I just have a question regarding, on page 8 here, it talks about the pay-as-you-go, but underneath there it says sales tax can be saved up over time. Is there a window where that sales tax needs to be spent?
Nope. You can save it as long as you want.
So we can save it as long as we want, so we can put those in interest-bearing accounts and have it grow too?
That's correct. There are no limitations on the, like if you sold bonds to fund a project, you have time limits on how fast you have to spend it and earnings limits on what you're allowed to earn. This money is free of all of that.
Thank you.
Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you. What's the timeline for getting this referendum on a ballot? How long, do you know what that would be?
So we have 3 election cycles every 2 years in Illinois to work with. So the primary election in March, you're basically at that deadline. Basically too late for that.
December 5th.
So then the next election cycle is the presidential election in November. The deadline for that is approval in early August. And then the next cycle after that is April. And the deadline for approval for that election is the very end of January.
Thank you. And then I had one other question on, it's on the chart with the small numbers, the example, 1% there. On the column 12, I guess it is that, so if the 1% sales tax was passed and we wanted to use all of the money to abate property taxes, then it would be equivalent to $171 tax abatement on a $100,000 house in the Rockford School District.
Right. The one catch, or the one add-on I would make to that statement is your current bond payment is about $14 million you see in column 10. But the revenues are $23.9 million of sales tax revenue. So you would own, this analysis is saying you would use 14 million of the 23.9 million to make your bond payments. So you're still going to have another 9 million left, right? But if you made the whole bond payment with sales tax revenue, which only uses about 60% of your sales tax revenue, that would be worth 51 cents on the levy, which is column 11. And on a $100,000 home, that would be worth $170 of property tax relief. On a $200,000 home, it would be worth basically double that. So that's what that data is telling you.
Okay, so it's bond payment plus reducing the property tax would result in that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll be going to item 8A, I'm sorry. A budget amendment, resolution and notice of public hearing on the amendment budget for 23-24 year. A budget amendment for FY24 is needed to reclassify costs to correct funds function codes. There is no change to the total revenue or expenses. The district is required by Illinois School Code to follow the same procedure as the budget's original adoption when a change is needed. Therefore, adoption of the resolution designating a public hearing and directing the publication of notice is required. Administration requests that January 23rd, 2024 be designated for the public hearing and the adoption of the amended budget. Are there any questions regarding this resolution and notice of public hearing on the amendment of the budget for 2023 and 2024? No questions? This will be brought forward to the December 19th, 2023 board meeting for approval. Item 8B, approval for agreement of the American Institute for Research mandatory services in 1003A designated schools. Every Student Success Act requires state to direct particular school improvement activities for schools that meet the criteria for being chronically underperforming. Certain schools must engage with the American Institute for Research on Comprehensive Needs Assessment for a rigorous comprehensive needs assessment. The level of service is dependent on their ISBE provided designation. This agreement meets the state's requirements for the 13 schools. The total cost is $598,675. For comprehensive needs assessments at $38,605 each, and 9 rigorous comprehensive needs assessments at $49,363 each. The entire cost will be covered by the fiscal year 24 allocation of Title I 1003A funds. Are there any questions on the approval agreement for the American Institute for Research's mandatory services in 1003A designated schools? Okay, seeing none, this will return for approval at the December 19th, 2023 meeting. And item 8C, Computing Technology Industry Associations, Inc. contract. The Computing Technology Industry Association, Inc., CompTIA, owns a platform called Test Out. This is a key curricular resource for the course Intro to Computers and Information Systems. We are looking for approval to purchase this application. Intro to Computers and Info Systems is a dual credit course that is currently running at all 4 traditional high schools as a part of the IT pathway. Teachers requested a curriculum based on a curriculum besides a textbook that will be interactive. Rock Valley recommended either My IT Lab or Test Out. Teachers of the course tested both products and determined that Test Out was a better fit. They are using temporary licenses to support instructions currently. This application is SOPA approved, and we have ITIS agreements on file. Are there any questions on the Technology Industry Association, Inc.? This will return for approval at the December 19th meeting. Now moving to a preview of the consent items. Number 9A, amendment to Student Transportation Services Agreement with First Students. Due to the bus driver shortages, First Student Incorporated was not able to fulfill student transportation agreement that was approved by the Board of Education on April 25th, 2023. Per the attached amendment, First Student will continue to hire, train, and license drivers to fulfill 12 routes no later than Friday, December 22nd, 2023, and 20 routes no later than February 20th, 2024. Right? The amendment allows First Student to provide a maximum of 40 drivers throughout the remainder of the term. As of Monday, November 13, 2023, First Student have provided enough drivers to support 10 routes. Are there any questions regarding the amendment to the Student Transportation Service Agreement? Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. I had talked to Mr. Phillips about this, but I guess if I could just get a little more clarification about the liquidated damages portion of the original contract and where we went with that, and why we decided to keep working with them, with First Student.
So we definitely started down a line of a very strong approach to First Student, but because they weren't able to meet the contract requirements. After further discussion internally, because First Student provided drivers day one. It was 2 to 3 drivers. And because we knew we were going to see potential call-offs because of sickness or personal reasons, we felt it was important to continue that relationship with First Student, so we had no canceled bus routes. I mean, that our overall goal was to get students to school, not canceling bus routes. And then as we onboarded more drivers and or First Student onboarded more drivers, starting to pick up students within that 1.5 mile walk zone within those 4 schools we had designated. And as we onboard more, continuing that process. You know, we really want to tackle our attendance and chronic absenteeism issue across the district. So we had the rights within the contract, but after reviewing that internally, talking to our legal counsel, internal and outside, we decided to go down this route, try to work with First Student to get additional drivers. So as I said, we could continue to support and get students to school. I would like to report that as of last week, we were transporting an additional 50 students to Lewis Lemon, an additional 59 students to McIntosh. I do want to make an update or revision. We've been transporting an additional 90 students from Ellis since the first day of school. So we were picking up within that 1.5 miles at Ellis from day one, and we've picked up an additional 50 students at Lathrop. In talking with First Student, they have been successful at advertising and getting new candidates on board. We're expecting by this December day, by the end of December, to have above that 12 driver number. So as I said, this just allows us to pick up more students. And what we're doing is, if you recall, in October, the board approved an incentive with our AFSCME members that they would give up their routes that they had bid to First Student, and then they would serve as backup drivers, as typically they're more familiar with the Rockford area. And we've working through that bidding process now, and we'll be prepared if the board decides to approve this amendment.
Any other questions?
I had a question, but he covered it. Thank you.
Okay, we will proceed to 9B, leases for student teachers. As a part of the teacher vacancy grant, a housing incentive was budgeted to recruit student teachers to RPS 205. This incentive will be targeted to student teacher candidates that are currently attending universities more than 60 miles from Rockford. Jason Pope has been recruiting student teachers this fall, and we have at least 5 students from universities that are more than 60 miles away and interested in student teaching in Rockford. Are there any questions regarding the leases with student teachers? Seeing none, that completes the report for the Planning and Development Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President McCall. I will now present the preview consent agenda items for Governance Committee. Policies 2.172 and 4.60, both revised to reflect the state's increase of public contract bidding threshold from 35,000, or correction, from 25,000 to 35,000. Under state law, effective January 1, 2024, contracts involving an expenditure in excess to 35,000 must be publicly bid. Are there any questions or discussion for those policies, those 2 policies? Okay, thank you. If not, Board Policy 621 is updated in response to change law requiring written statement prohibiting the practice of banning books for districts that wish to be eligible for state library grants. Policy 7.18 is presented in response to the Illinois School Board Association requirement that the policy be viewed every 2 years and is revised to reflect changes in statute. Additional protected categories are added with regard to bullying and detailed that parent guardian notification is to occur within 24 hours of the school being made aware of the incident. Is also added. Note that the statute also requires this policy to be modeled after the ISBE template expected to be presented by the ISBE by January 2024. And that template has yet to be released, so the board can expect to see this policy for proposed revision again after ISBE releases the template. Are there any questions or comments regarding 7.180? Mrs. Bennett?
I just have a question about, it's on page 3. It says, all individual instances of bullying, as well as threats, suggestions, or instances of self-harm determined to be the result of bullying must be reported to parent guardians of the student involved. Do we know who is doing the asking about the self-harm in addition to who's going to be the one reporting to parent guardians?
Can you just ask that again so I can make sure I answer correctly?
So if a school is made aware of an instance of self-harm, who's going to be asking the student to figure out if it's rooted in bullying or as a result of bullying or in any relation to bullying, in addition to who is going to be the one to contact the parents?
So our school social worker or school psychologist will call the parent and they will assess the student. So they're the one that will assess the self-harm to determine what next steps for that. In terms of the bullying investigation, our school psychs and school social workers lead that investigation with our school administrators side by side with them. So the school social worker, so there has to be a mental health professional in the room asking the questions.
Okay, and then how would this work in conjunction with SAS that component as well?
Sure, so if the school psych or the school social worker determine that that the self-harm, that there's serious injury going to happen, or whatever they determine from that, they'll be the ones that request SAS. So they'll work with the parent to either hospitalize the student with the parent or call SAS to have that move that forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I am going to just bring to attention, I'm going to go back to policy 2.172. So typically when I look at policies, I look at the date it was adopted and the revision date. So one of the issues with policies, and I have asked Attorney Holy to check into, we use press, and of course you can review the press policies on the Illinois Association School Board Association website, but there's also a Press Plus. So press sends us the updates on policies as required. But if we don't have, now, I'm not exactly sure, depending on the policy number, depends on if it's press or if it's an actual a board policy that we created. But for example, this policy was adopted January 14th, 1997. It was never reviewed, but revised in 2012. And so we have to get better at reviewing our policies. So one of the things that came up at the conference is, and we had this discussion before, where it relates to procedure and policy. So there is administrative procedures that administration compile, and the board does not cross that boundary. However, that there should be an administrative policy associated with board policy. So I'm not sure if Ms. Yashika Ms. Goldsmith can give us more information, because board docs kind of work when it want to work. So you can't always get to where you need to go. So in reviewing the policies, I was trying to locate the administrative policy that coincide with this policy, and was not successful. So for the sake of board knowledge, can you so everyone's on the same page and being able to retrieve the procedure associated with it? Ms. Holy's at the mic as well.
Do you want me to address that? So
welcome back, by the way.
Yes, we have, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We have administrative procedures that go with different board policies. We also have administrative guidelines. Those tend to be much more extensive, so you'll see like the field trip handbooks, or in finance, they have a lot of handbooks that go with their implementations that are required by the auditors for documentation. HR has them, special ed has their their guideline book for IEPs. So we have a lot of different things that go along with it. Administrative procedures tend to be not as extensive, but they're more extensive than what the board policies are. So they're telling administration how to implement board policy. Not all of the different guidelines are hooked up onto board docs, and that's just because there's so many of them out in the district. But we do have what the press publishes as the administrative procedures. Those are the ones suggested by press, and so we do include those to go with the board policies.
Okay, so how quickly can we reference it? Because if we're checking a policy, are you suggesting that we reach out each time we review a policy to retrieve the administrative policy associated with it?
No. So if there is an administrative procedure attached to it or associated with the policy, that is on board docs. If there isn't an administrative procedure on board docs, there may be guidelines associated with it, associated with a policy or a group of policies, or it may not even be a particular policy, but it explains how to, it may be step-by-step guidelines, such as the special ed manual, which is several hundred pages. So I don't know how to explain that, but I guess if you have a question about a particular policy and whether or not, and if there isn't an associated administrative procedure, you could reach out and we could identify whether or not there is a particular guideline as well.
Okay, so this is what I recommend.
Excuse me, may I supplement Ms. Holy's answer?
Sure, of course.
When we're looking on board docs and we see the features, the meetings, the agenda, and then the policies, if you were to click on the policies, and you would see them there, and then you go to the left side of the screen, and there's a drop down there that says Administrative Regulations, Governing Policies, and Manuals. So you can see the administrative regulations by clicking on that drop down in board docs. Alternatively, the district has been working to update the website so that when you go to the Board of Education webpage and you click on the governing policies from that page, there are also administrative regulations that have been tacked or attached on to those governing policies as we've been updating them. So the way to find the most accurate source of the administrative regulations available to the public are on board docs, but we have been working to update the RPS 205 website as well on the governing policies found on the Board of Education page.
Okay, so my next question is, when there is a review or revision, we are also going in to do what is necessary on the administrative procedure.
Correct.
Okay.
Once that policy has been approved, the changes have been approved, then we do make the changes to the administrative procedures.
And is there any update on the Press Plus?
Yes, Ms. Fromm did contact our liaison, and it will take, according to the liaison, they would upload our policies, the non-press policies. It would take 6 to 9 months, I believe is what they had indicated. But then what they do is they reach back out to legal department for any suggested changes, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Okay, so so we have to come up with some way of reviewing our policies that are not associated with press more frequently, because we have, you know, and we'll get through them just for discussion, if any, or a comment, and getting a rhythm in updating, because I'm concerned that if a policy have not been reviewed and or revised, then we have not carried out duties in an appropriate fashion. And I think that that's where the collision have been. So as we work together and understanding our roles and working together, then we could perhaps alleviate carrying out procedures where board policies does not support. Does that make sense?
It does, and Ms. Goldsmith and I did speak about that, and we could put it on our calendars to highlight to the board. Those, I think there's a handful of policies, 10 to 12 of them that are non-press policies. We could put them on for an annual review, put, 6 on one agenda and then 6 on another, and do it that way.
Okay, so thank you. And that goes back to, we all received policies to review. So and it was like, actually, I think it was like 14, because we all should have gotten 2. So if you can review those and communicate amongst ourselves without responding to a group, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page and ask those necessary questions that we should ask. I think that's all that I have for you, Ms. Holy. I'm just going to run through these. In regards to the bully policy, there is, we want to make sure, because this conversation have come up before where it relates to the general public. We have resources, but the community or parents is not aware of necessarily the resources that we have. And some don't even know to ask. So when we're reviewing discipline packets, sometimes we'll come across where the bullying comes up, right? So if a kid is being bullied, one, some are afraid to speak up because they are being bullied. But in the event that they speak up and they tell their parent, and the parent reach out to the school, somehow we need to bridge the gap so the student is felt safe and to know that that is being taken care of. So do we still have the bullying form available at the schools for parents to complete?
We do. So we have a digital copy that can be sent to the parents. They can fill out that way. We also have a QR code in all of our schools. You'll see that when you tour the schools. I know you've all been in the schools, so you'll see the large posters that look like a telephone that have all the buttons on them. And if you QR code that, it pulls you right into it pulls you into Let's Talk, so they can do anonymous report to the building principal, or they can name themselves and say that they're having an issue, to please contact them. And or students can seek out any staff member and fill out that bullying investigation form that starts the bullying investigation process.
Okay, and when you're, when student services are reviewing the packets, is there any way that we can flag where where there's indication that a student had been bullied, so we can follow up prior to the board meeting? I know that that's work, but there's to kind of help with some questions that will come up in closed session. If there was any way that we can kind of flag that to follow up on, was there an investigation, was bullying ever reported, things of that sort, so we can have that information readily available while we're making decisions on how to handle that particular discipline packet.
Absolutely. We've included that recently in our script.
Awesome.
So we can make sure that that's there whenever there's an alleged or actual bullying investigation that's actually happened.
Okay.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so board policy 4.60, adopted March 11th, 1997, was never reviewed but revised 2008, and then was on a schedule through September 19, 2023. And that's operational services, purchase and contracts. So anyone have any questions on that? I'll quickly get through these. 6.20, adopted July 8th, 1997, never reviewed, revised August 9th, 2022. Policy 5.80, adopted 2007, never reviewed, revised on prior to revision, October 28, 2014, reviewed April 2020. General personnel, policy 5.0. 5.10, correction. Adopted 1997, revised in 98 and 2010, 2012, 2018, 2021, and May 2022. I'm going to pause on policy 510 for a moment in case I come back to it. So personnel, employment selection process, policy 5.35. Adopted August 2002 and reviewed 2019. So it's been 4 years since it's reviewed. So I did have a question on this particular policy because it has a section, initial interviews. And under a section, under initial interviews on section B, qualified applicants or other administrative positions shall be interviewed by an interview committee. This committee shall be established based upon the position that is open. It may include the superintendent, school board members, and community leaders, as well as RPS management team members. Have there ever been any board members engaged in interviewing? Lori is coming to the mic.
That is specifically drafted for when you all have the opportunity to hire one or both of your two employees. So the answer to your question is absolutely. There have been board members involved in those interviews.
So I think that as we review the policies, that we also review wording and a further explanation, because it could easily be misunderstood for those that are reviewing publicly, right? So we want to take a look at that. And frequently, and I know that specifically if we use policies that come from press, and we see designee a lot. And I think that as we review policies, we could be more specific, and because we can change the wording of the policies to meet our district. So it does not have to be a duplicate of what press sends us. So to be a designee, it should be more specific, whether it's 1 to 3 people, just for the sake of knowing who's handling a particular scenario regarding to the policy.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I ask a question for clarification?
Sure.
And I want to really commend all of you for taking an interest in policies, because that's really part of board governance. Should we perhaps, I know you assigned certain members to take a look at certain policies. Should we set up meetings in the legal department to go through so we can draft any proposed changes, or do you want to send them the proposed changes to us so then we can get them on board? How would you like to implement this?
Okay, so my ask to other board members, when you review the policies, that you would make that suggestion if you notice, or there's question or you need clarity, that you would ask those questions and make those recommendations to send them to legal with the recommendation. Does that work for everyone?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Policy 5.30, general personnel hiring process. It has different categories. After that, that was adopted July 1997 and was never reviewed, but it wasn't that much longer before it was revised. And of course, you all have these policies. So I took the time in regards to policies, because I really want to reiterate how important the policy is in the role that we play. So if there is, we can't continue, if it be the case, to carry out a procedure based on what we feel, how we feel it should be. There should be a cross-reference and be able to do a balance to make sure that so that there's no question in regards to equity and ethics in any of our policies as we carry on the work of board and the district. Any question on any of the policies? Okay. Are there any questions for governance consent items? If not, we're now on the petition and communication portion of our meeting, where we invite public to make comments. The board, do we have any speakers? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Right before me. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you will be contacted in a timely manner by staff. Each speaker will be allowed no more than 3 minutes to address the board. It is not appropriate to discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. If you look to your left, you will see 2 digital clocks. One show the total time allotted to public comments, and one show the total time for each speaker. We thank you for your cooperation with these guidelines. So we'll call 2 at a time, but one will speak and then the other one move closer to be available at their designated time. Justin Johnson, Mr. Justin Johnson, and then Genevieve Dimbley, Ms. Genevieve Dimbley. Ms. Genevieve, you can have a seat until your turn. You're close enough. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Justin Johnson. I have 2 children in the Rockford Public Schools, and I stand before you tonight to shed light on a known problem that is not thoroughly being addressed among the students of RPS. Dyslexia is a learning disability that affects 1 out of 5 and 100% of my children. The problem is that dyslexia is not being fully identified, acknowledged, and understood by teachers, school psychologists, staff, other professionals, and administration. For years, I've come to the table to discuss with the multidisciplinary team the difficulties my children are having. I am dumbfounded each and every time with the lack of knowledge and understanding the team has with a dyslexia diagnosis. I come to the table where the school psychologist cannot even define dyslexia correctly and states subjectively it's overdiagnosed. I've been told, go to another school, you may get services there. These are the types of comments I hear time and time again, and I'm not alone. Not once have we had the discussion to bring my children up to grade level. We have had to hire a private dyslexia tutor on our own in the tune of $20,000 a child thus far. In Rockford Public School initiatives, how is this equitable? What about the kids that do not have the resource? How many hoops do parents need to jump through to have their children given the same opportunity as their peers? By choosing the right interventions, strategies, and accommodations, these can have significant impacts in their growth as a learner and help these kids meet their potential, or at least get them to the same level as their peers. The state of Illinois put out a handbook this year for parents, educators, and students called the Dyslexia Guide. I beg you to start a district initiative and establish a task force to lean in hard and address this opportunity. I would like to see in-services, continuing education offerings, and use of the professionals that are already contracted within the walls of RPS to train staff. Exceed the basic requirements that the state is putting forth and hone in on this need among the students of RPS. Interventions, strategies, training, and accommodations do work. These are bright children that are being passed over because many do not fall to the lowest of the low. A multi-level approach needs to take place, but when the first roadblock is the lack of knowledge, let's start there. Rise up to the 20% of those in need to meet the potential that is owed to them.
Sir, thank you. Your time is up. Thank you very much.
Can I start? Okay. Hello, I am Dr. Genevieve Dibley, and I am the Religious Studies Professor at Rockford University. And I'm here tonight to draw the board's attention to the underserved population of dyslexic students in RPS 205. Dyslexia is a structural neurodivergency. It's mappable by brain scan. It is diagnosed by a neuropsychological evaluation. It is a medical diagnosis. It is identified by Illinois state law as a disability and thereby eligible for services by the Federal Disabilities Act. Dyslexia is an inherited condition. Every child born to a couple in which one of the parents is dyslexic has a 50-50 chance of being dyslexic themselves. I have 2 daughters. One of them is dyslexic. She inherited her dyslexia from me as I inherited my dyslexia from my father. My neurotypical daughter scored in the 99th percentile in English in her PSAT. My equally intelligent dyslexic daughter has never read at grade level in the entirety of her career at RPS 205. It is estimated that 24% of the world's population is dyslexic. 1 in 5 children in the world is dyslexic. 1 in 5 children in RPS 205 is dyslexic. Unremediated dyslexic children read slower. They are therefore exposed to fewer words than their peers. As knowledge scales, as we all know, they consequently are exposed to less content and fewer concepts over their schooling. They become frustrated and conclude that school is not a place in which they can thrive. However, if addressed in early grades, kindergarten through 2nd grade, when reading is being taught, dyslexia is entirely remediable. I, for example, was diagnosed and remediated when I was in the 2nd grade in Washington State. I subsequently learned to love to read. I excelled in school. I graduated from a master's degree program in which I learned 5 languages in 3 years. I graduated from UC Berkeley with a PhD in Near Eastern religions, essentially a lit degree. I am severely dyslexic. By contrast, we have had an exceedingly difficult time finding resources for my dyslexic daughter here in Rockford. No school we have attended in RPS has had any knowledge of dyslexia, let alone targeted interventions. At great expense, we have hired a private tutoring firm to remediate her dyslexia. 2 intensive interventions in 5th and 9th grade saw her aggressively close gaps left by the failures of the RPS system. With appropriate interventions, she leaped forward whole grades in mere months. I say this not to shame RPS, but rather to inspire. Dyslexia is an entirely addressable challenge
I do apologize, but
that
your
will
time
help
is
you
up.
meet your goals of
Thank you
having
very much.
children read by the 3rd grade.
Thank you. Ms. Anika Nugren, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, followed by Rebecca White Nugren.
Hi, I'm Annika. I'm a freshman at East High. I love my teachers, my school. I was on the swim team and I'm currently on the dance team and a member of Student Commission. I've been attending Rockford Public Schools since I was in kindergarten. In February of last year, I was diagnosed with phonological dyslexia. This hinders me because I can't spell very well. When I'm taking notes in class, I can't read them back to myself. I often have to choose words that are easier for me to spell when I'm writing papers, which makes it seem as though my vocabulary is smaller than it actually is. Because I'm dyslexic, the way I learned how to read was just by memorizing every word until it became a sight word. This means when I come across new words that I haven't seen written out before, I have trouble figuring out what the word is. Eventually, I figure all this out. It just takes me longer, and I have to work really hard. My parents and I decided that a 504 plan would be best to get the accommodations I need to do the best I can in school. So a few weeks ago, a meeting was held with a team of people who work at my school. Going into that meeting, I thought that everyone in the room would be there to help me to excel to the best of my abilities. Instead, the school psychologist questioned my diagnosis, belittled my feelings, and how I struggle in school. Throughout that meeting, I was constantly being compared to the rest of the student body, which I don't appreciate because I would just like to do my best no matter what anyone else is doing. As of right now, I am not a straight-A student, although that is one of my goals, and I believe I could achieve it if my teachers knew more about dyslexic students and allowed me to do reports instead of tests. I am thankful that the district made an accommodation for me last year when I was an 8th grader at Lincoln Middle School. I took an accelerated math course at East because I was ahead of my grade. This year, I hope the district will give me accommodations for my dyslexia. In the words of a soccer Olympic gold medalist and author of the book Wolfpack, Abby Wambach stated, "Be grateful for what you have and demand what you deserve." On behalf of all students who are dyslexic, up to 20%, we demand that all students get screened for dyslexia and receive the tutoring and accommodations that we need.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca White-Newgren. Thank you so much for serving on the school board. The last time I was here was to ask for a change in curriculum during online COVID schooling, and it happened, so thank you so much. I can't take any credit, but thank you so much for listening. I am a big RPS 205 fan. I am currently the president of the newly formed Lincoln Middle School PTCO, C standing for community, and the proud swim coach. My 3 children have had the most amazing teachers, one of them is here today, and the opportunity to make friends with so many different types of children. The diversity warms my heart. They attend East and just this year, the Montessori school. I'm here today because we collectively as a community and participants in this great district have an opportunity to be an academic leader across the country, to reach a segment of students in a creative way, and to meet our reading goals each year a little easier. I also am here to talk about dyslexia. I do too want to tell you that 1 in 5 children, up to 20%, have dyslexia, but write down this website, Made by Dyslexia. Dyslexia is an interesting disability because while it is a disability and requires intervention, it is often accompanied by a high level of intelligence and creativity. This means that with hard work and determination, many of these children can mask their disability. These students can be hard to spot. My own child, who you just heard from, went unnoticed and undiagnosed until 8th grade. She was really late to read, did finally click in 2nd grade. But we now know that all she did was memorize every word. She struggles to break down words, which is really important when you read an entire passage thinking a woman is unstable when really she is unstoppable. Having dyslexia means you often have to reread entire sections, and it takes more time for comprehension. Children with dyslexia, if they learn to read, have to work harder than the other students unless accommodations are made to even the playing field. This is an issue of equity. The opportunity is this. You all have rightfully focused on 3rd graders' reading level. We all know that when a child doesn't read in 3rd grade, their likelihood of ending up in prison drastically increases. What if 20% of those 3rd graders are dyslexic? What if there were proven methods to teach children with dyslexia to read? There are. You all figured out how to test every child in kindergarten for the gifted program. Thank you for doing that. And I am confident that you can test every child for dyslexia and put into place the proper curriculum for these students. In our case, we are running into a system that is not prepared. Wonderful teachers and reading specialists who want to help but have not been trained to remediate dyslexia. They want to help. Would you please give them and their families the tools to help curb the effects of dyslexia? The future of our great community is riding on your answer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Annika, I do apologize for mispronouncing your name. I think I got it right that time. Thank you. If there's no, and thanks to all of the speakers who spoke on behalf of the students that are struggling with dyslexia. Perhaps that's something that we can look at a little closer to find out if there's any association at all that is showing up in discipline. Yeah, something just, kind of clicked. So thank you. It's important that we hear from community and someone have to advocate for students. And we appreciate your efforts to offer suggestions and recommendations. We hear you. And I, of course, was watching the superintendent, and he was diligently taking notes, and I am confident that he will be addressing this. No pressure, Dr. Jarrett. Anyone else? Any comments? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion and wait one moment, Ms. VP. I'll take a motion and a second.
So moved.
To adjourn, yes. Mm-hmm.
Second.
Thank you. You all have a good night, and thanks again.
Specials.